50 years ago, a great American in whose momentous shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He said, the man that would be 97 years old today, almost a century. And this momentous degree, he suggested, had presented a great beacon light of hope for freedom. But looking out on a crowd gathered before the Lincoln Memorial on a balmy day in August, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who was born with a birth name Michael like myself, but which was changed, just like the name that was supposed to be chosen for me was changed, declared a pandemic condition in America, stating that he had come to cash a check, but it had been returned from the Bank of Justice, marked insufficient funds, stating that the Negro in America still was not free, but drawing towards his conclusion in the melodious rhythm of a black preacher and diplomatic magnanimity. He stated that, in spite of everything, he still yet had a dream. I was not even born yet when my father stood amongst the persons gathered in that crowd that had marched on the city of Washington. The scene that we often see in pictures in black and white, in stills and in film footage. But I was born and still very young when, at my father's request, Reverend King came to our city, Jersey City, to receive an honorary degree for our local Jesuit college. And even in that staunchly Democrat city, the event was nearly canceled because of a fear that there was stirred by a bomb threat. A bomb threat at a religious school. I can only faintly remember the day when excitement rose all around the house because of a call from Atlanta from his loving family to share with ours the tragic news that he had been slain by an assassin's bullet while standing on the balcony smoking a cigarette. A fact that not many people know, the fact that Jesse Jackson helped to conceal by removing that item from a crime scene at a motel where he had frequented so much that he even had a special room reserved for him, room 306, a place I go to visit every time I return to Memphis. The bullet came from a rifle just a little more than 50 meters away, and the bullet from that rifle struck him so hard that it ripped the tie from his neck and threw him violently down on his back. And while not at the time, but through many years of research and experience later, especially with regard to the power of firearms while serving in the military, I began to realize that there was no way that a man known in history as a man of nonviolence in his last moments could probably see the barrel of the weapon that shot him from across the street. Just like he saw the face of the woman who in Harlem, a black deranged woman as he described, tried to use a letter opener to rip open his chest while he was signing a book. But the news stories had a moment in an election year that had to be sold. And even as a small child, I began to notice a great disconnect between the news that we saw on our family television about a sniper assassin and the reality of the world in which we live. But I too had a dream that one day it would not be like that or have to be like that. But I was still just a child who spoke like a child and who understood as a child. I still remember vividly arriving at my father's church late one Sunday morning and being seated in the basement overflow room as I watched one of my father's favorite deacons approach him in the pulpit while drawing him away. At that moment, it was not apparent exactly what had occurred to anyone, but moments later I saw on the black and white closed-circuit monitor a somber face, a somber countenance upon my father's face that I had never seen before or after. I was not quite yet old enough to process everything occurring in our home as the riots ripped through the streets of Newark in the aftermath of Reverend King's death. And my father, as a chaplain, who had traveled every day to the war-torn city of Newark, along with one of his very best friends, a famous civil rights and criminal defense attorney by the name of Raymond Brown, for whom I became a childhood protege, learning about the law, sitting in court, and only in stories after could I gather more insights about what they went through. As around Sunday dinner tables, my father and Ray would retell the story about how they had been sent into a public housing project, with my father refusing to carry a weapon, as they had to go to rescue the black activist and poet known as Leroy Jones or Amiri Baraka. But on that Sunday morning, to a stricken with horror and sadness congregation, my father, with tears in his eyes, even interrupted the choir in the song that they had begun to sing while he took a moment away from the pulpit to receive an unexpected telephone call from down in Atlanta. It was Reverend Martin Luther King Sr., or Daddy King, on the phone, who would let my father personally know that his wife had just been shot while playing the piano in the church. And since my father's sister Mamie was playing for the gospel choir that day, I could only wonder if her life too might be in danger. But I had a dream that one day it would not have to be like that. But I was just a child who spoke like a child and who understood as a child. I still remember in the summer of 1971 taking a family vacation to the city of Atlanta to travel for the first time to Auburn Avenue. First to take the tourist visit aboard the Gray Line tour bus like everybody else. But after on a Sunday morning to worship in the Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church that I would return to every Sunday after we got liberty to leave the Fort Benning, Georgia, to meet Daddy King and his beautiful wife for the first time. And thereafter to enjoy a meal at Pascal's, the soul food establishment out by Clark College, which was kind of like Sylvia's in Harlem, but real southern style. I remember going out to Drew University with Mr. Sheargy, a novitiate at our Jesuit high school, who could not possibly know that he was not just giving me, another black kid at school, a predominantly white and elite Jesuit high school, a chance to hear Daddy King for the first time when he had appeared for a speech there. And you should have seen the look on Mr. Sheargy's face when Daddy King looked out on the crowd, interrupting his own speech to ask if I was Reverend Webb's boy. I said, yes, indeed, sir, that is who I am. And he had to he actually took the time to make a seat for me up front so that he could keep an eye on me, because he definitely knew the mischief that a preacher's kid could get into. He wanted to be able to give my daddy a full and complete report. While attending an elite college in Shenandoah Valley, a school that had actually withdrawn an invitation from the students to invite Reverend King to speak back in the turbulent 60s. Watching on C-SPAN, the Democrat governor of Arizona, Bruce Babbitt, awkwardly standing in the Ebenezer Baptist Church, the church home of my father's friends, so that he could have a photo op as he launched his campaign for the presidency. And as he said, standing up and trying to impress the crowd, that he felt like he walked through history. I could only think to myself, if that is how he felt, then how should I feel? But I too had a dream that one day it would not have to be like that. But I was still just a child who spoke like a child and who understood as a child. On that day in Washington that everyone remembers, especially today, as if that was the only speech that Reverend King ever spoke about a dream, he actually said, I can still remember hearing the melodious voice of one African-American student who used to use that speech when he spoke in competitions. I have a dream. One day a man will not be judged by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. I have a dream today. But today, with just days before an inauguration, we celebrate again a person headed to the highest offices, not because of any discussion about their character, which is questionable, especially in this present year, even matching that of Reverend King, who in a separation doctrine never made any announcement about his political affiliation, leaving many to openly speculate about how they want him to be. Nor ever even ran for office, and purposefully so, as if that alone might cause someone with a little bit of morality and ethics to engage in a caution for using his memory for political purpose, and most especially for a fundraiser, as they do every year in the most reliable Democrat Party district in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We are supposed to be happy because a person with a black face is going to the White House. with no concerns at all as to whether or not she is even prepared to address a public health crisis that even that political party will admit has been disproportionately fatal to persons of color. And now a year later, just like for the forgotten elderly residing in nursing homes for whom we went to court to save, a known risk population from the beginning, we even find black preachers giving Dr. Fauci the running tallies of amens he is getting on an online event. And only now, after a year of death and disease, should we shout hallelujah and get happy because a new vaccine rushed through production is on the way. Perhaps one day long ago in my past, before a pandemic crisis, but only because I was still a child, who spoke as a child, who understood as a child, I may have thought differently, but now I am a man, and I must put away those childish things, because I am not pleased. I am not pleased. I am not pleased. I am not pleased that progressives will readily change the name of a schoolhouse to whitewash away the stains of history, and then even fail to teach those kids of color inside about the real history, but only the fairy tales that are deemed politically correct and acceptable to them. I am not pleased. I am not pleased by the news reports that are more concerned with glamorizing and provoking people for the purposes of an election rather than simply reporting the truth and permitting people as responsible adults to choose for themselves. I am not pleased today. Reverend King said the only thing that he wanted us to do was to be true to what we said on paper, as he talked about the things that he had read that people had said. I am not pleased that because of the color of a hat I wear or the person for whom I choose to vote in a democratic process where I'm supposed to have a choice is deemed not acceptable and subject to ridicule and censure. Even with a grandfather who became a martyr for that right on a day upon which my father's family lost everything that they had and had to start to climb up from the depths of poverty all over again. And as I stand here, third generation from slavery, third generation military officer, third generation college graduate, I am not pleased. I am not pleased today that politicians who had no problem at all, despite every scientific report determinatively validating that there is no possible way that a pathogen that is less than 5% infectious could even dream to set off a super spreader event inside a place of worship, close the doors of Christ Church because a single strand of RNA has become, as we are told, bigger than even God. And while we hide behind the mask for feelings of efficacy and empowerment, denying the empirically established fact, even under Obama's care administration, with the very best of diagnostic equipment that we even use to provide a rating for medical equipment, medical grade equipment, that they simply and plainly do not work, providing little or no protection at all, and finding some simply afraid to speak the truth or simply ignorant of the true facts, despite a death toll over 250,000 in America. And those who know well the truth even purposefully engage in schemes to be held accountable in court, like even Governor Ralph Northam, who says he is a man of great faith, who since April has successfully evaded the sheriff, and since June, the United States Marshal, and even today, as we celebrate the birthday of a man who was a drum major for justice and a preacher of the gospel, like the days before he died, the press will not even get around to talking about that. But maybe none of that matters now, because I have been to a mountaintop, and I have seen a promised land, and I am not afraid today of any man, because mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. As stated by the Supreme Court in the case against General Aaron Burr for treason in 1807, if the gentleman had believed this decision to be favorable to him, he would have heard of it in the beginning of his argument. For the path of inquiry in which he was led him directly to it. Interpreting the American Constitution, he would have preferred no authority to that of the Supreme Court of the country. Yes, sir, he would have immediately seized this decision with avidity. He would have set it before you in every possible light. He would have illustrated it. He would have adorned it. You would have seen it under the actions of his genius appear with all the varying grandeur of our mountains in the morning sun. He would not have relinquished it for the common law, nor have deserted a rock so broad and solid to walk upon the waves of the Atlantic. But he knew that this decision closed against him completely the very point for which he was laboring. Hence it was a decision was kept so sedulously out of view until from the excluded materials of the common law he thought he had reared a Gothic edifice, so huge and so dark as quite to overshadow and eclipse it. Let us bring it from this obscurity into the face of day, we who are seeking truth and not victory. Whether right or wrong, have no reason to turn our eyes from any source of light which presents itself, and least of all from a source so high and so respectable as the decision of the Supreme Court of the United States. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for governor of Virginia. I ask every Christian, every conservative, every Republican, every Democrat, every liberal, every conservative, and every Virginian and American true to like the motto of the imagery. Follow me and we shall overcome. Honest. And y'all come back now. Yeah. This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.
Reach out and lead me, guide me and keep me in the shelter of your care each day. 'Cause I am a seeker and you are a keeper. You